Good morning, friends. I'm Stephen Norper, the Senior Vice President here at the Korea Society, and we're delighted to have you here today. Thank you especially to those of you who were here with the National Assembly Speaker, Speaker Chung, yesterday. I know some of you have made heroic efforts to come twice in 12 hours, but we really do appreciate your being here. For those of you who are new, we hope we offer you something that's quite interesting today. And this is part of a series. Today is part of a series called Knowing North Korea. And it is designed to present as many facets as we can figure out about North Korea. It flows from a series that we did on China-North Korea relations that was very well attended, which you can access via our free podcasts. But we've developed it quite a bit more. And this is about the 8th or ninth installment. What's unique about this presentation is this is the first of something that I've wanted to do for a very long time here at the Korea Society, which was to feature a prominent journalist and to bring the media to the table. So often here at the Society, we bring in corporate leaders, we bring in policy analysts, policymakers, but it is rare, and hopefully it will become an increasing pattern to bring those of our colleagues who are out from the Fourth Estate, who do such a tremendous job of providing so much information and who have really a unique ability to gather information, to observe with very keen insight, and to really write with truth. And so as somebody who has worked with the Edward R. Murrow Center for 4 years, I'm delighted now here at the Korea Society to be able to share some time with people as eminent as our speaker today. Ivan Zakharchenko is with RIA-Novosti. He is the New York and UN correspondent. But for our purposes today, I would go back to his earlier time where he spent half a decade living in North Korea. And as many colleagues as we meet who have spent time in North Korea, none have spent half a decade living in North Korea. So he will share some of his reflections, and he has very consistently, since that time, watched the development of North Korea. He also is something of a historic figure because he was the first Russian journalist in South Korea once there was rapprochement and opening in the early 1990s. And so that was a unique time indeed, a diplomatic crescendo for the Republic of Korea with their diplomatic recognition with the Soviet Union, China, and then UN membership. And so Ivan was there to help report for TASS at the time what that opening was. He has also served in Japan and in Australia, so he brings very much a pan-Pacific set of perspectives. And his education, as you may have seen from his bio, was at Moscow State University. So Ivan, we're really delighted to have you here to help us in terms of knowing North Korea. Please help me welcome Ivan.
Thank you very much for coming here, and it's a great pleasure and for me to speak. This is the first time I'm doing so in New York. I'll try to be very short, and then I'll show you some pictures on the slideshow about North Korea. As you know, North Korea is a parallel reality. It's just another planet where life goes its own way by its own logic and exists in its own order. Historically, Korea was called Hermit Kingdom. In the past, foreigners were not welcomed and even killed. Soviet Russia had created the North Korean regime by its own model, but was able to rule North Korea only for just a few years. After the Korean War and after the death of Joseph Stalin, the PRK step by step turned to be a hermit kingdom once again, with no trust to any country whatsoever. Being a journalist in such a place is always a risk to be a victim of misapprehension. Reflexively, we start judging any alien reality, comparing it with our own life, stereotypes, and beliefs. And being a journalist, I always try to destroy stereotypes wherever I have been. Today, I'd like to share some experiences of being a journalist in North Korea all the more so because nowadays many more my Western colleagues go to North Korea for work. It's a privilege because Russian journalists have no chance to open new correspondent bureaus in Pyongyang anymore. Now the North Korean elite is interested to be of interest to the West. So, first of all, being a journalist in North Korea requires to follow the rules. The rules are formulated by the Information Department of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of DPRK. All foreign correspondents should get approval for their stay and work in the country. They should abide by following condition. Your work must contribute the relations, good relations, and should not be hostile. That means that if a journalist writes a story with criticism of the North Korean system or its leaders of the present, of the past, he will not only have problems with getting official interviews or invitations to press events, but also will be called on the carpet to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. Please write positive reports about our country, the North Koreans always told me, and I was very surprised to hear exactly the same phrase when I first came to work in South Korea as well. Foreign correspondents should understand the difference in mentality between nations very properly. Let's imagine that you invite someone to your house and the guest starts criticizing your furniture, the food you prepared for him, and so on. We will definitely be angry and will never invite him again. For Koreans, their country is their home, and foreigners coming there are guests. If a foreigner criticizes their country or says unpleasant things that North Koreans know about without any foreign interference, they got upset and consider the critics as a hostile act. So it's a violation of the rule. This should be taken under consideration very carefully. Even if a journalist writes something that is not really critical, but something that North Korean authorities would like to hide, it can also be a problem. When in the mid-90s I described so-called quiet reforms of Kim Jong-il and economy, quoting what I was told by Koreans in the marketplaces, the Information Department was displeased about it a lot. The logic was like my reports allegedly contained confidential information which was used by the South Korean government or press in campaigns against Pyongyang. Doing so, they explained, I provided assistance to South Korea and the Department of Information could not tolerate this. And the even more innocent topics can attract attention of the DPRK authorities. In the late 80s, I filed a story about cleaning Pyongyang streets from suddenly fallen snow. What seemed interesting to me that within minutes after the snowfall, women, housewives, and children took shovels and cleaned the roads. A North Korean official asked me why I wrote about it, but I just didn't have any answer. Then the official gave it to me. He said, I wanted to stress that in Korea, hand labor is used when in Russia the work is done by machines. My attempts to argue this point were completely in vain. Interviews and visits to institutions or industrial sites are possible only by arrangement by the Information Department. A correspondent should present a list of required interviews with questions to the department 1 month in advance. On average, only 3 out of 10 interviews were provided. For me, each time, all the rest were declined. The more political the topic is, the less chance you will get the interview. But it doesn't make work of a journalist impossible in North Korea. Definitely, it is not easy, but if you speak the Korean language, get some knowledge on Korean national character and behave in a friendly way, it is possible to work as a journalist. Often people ask me if I was followed in North Korea. No, it's not necessary. A person with European appearance stands out everywhere. And if he does anything suspicious, the people around will definitely report about this within minutes. You can see groups of school, I'll show you a picture of it. You can see groups of school children with red neckties standing at every crossroad in Pyongyang, and I would like to explain why. The point is that every foreigner's car has a specific number plate. If you drive your car anywhere, the children write down the number and the time. So, thus collecting this data will make it easy to get the whole information about where and when you were going. And no CCTV cameras are needed with it to share ideas. One more thing, taking pictures in North Korea. If you want to take a picture, you should ask permission because it is impolite not to do so. The same is true in South Korea, by the way. When I needed to shot a picture of someone in Pyongyang, I progressively got closer and closer very, very slowly, not to frighten people or make them apprehensive. For a while, I was just watching, making simple conversation with them, and then asking for their permission to take some photos. Now just a couple of words about the country. The typical stereotype about North Korea is that the country looks like a concentration camp with suppressed, miserable, and gloomy people silently wandering around gray and cold streets. I met a French woman in Pyongyang who was very surprised to see North Korean people smiling and laughing. But why not? People can feel happiness when in love, when they are young and reckless, when they hear the children laughing. There are plenty of beautiful parks in Pyongyang. There are flowers, bright colors, music, and singing everywhere. Impression of life is everywhere. But when you stay there for a long time, the euphoria of the first weeks turns into feeling that you are not in a prison camp, but in a lunatic asylum. If you care how hard and hopeless life of many North Koreans is, fear is what governs the country. Perceptions of North Korea are usually incorrect because, as I have already said, something we see sometimes is not really what we think it is. Or something might be even worse than we see it. I'll give you some examples. Foreign journalists see old women collecting grass along a roadside and convince the readers of the articles that they have witnessed hungry people eating grass. Indeed, the women collect a plant called shepherd's purse. You can see it even in New York here in the streets, which is a delicacy in soups and salads. And you can also buy it in the H-Mart supermarket in New Jersey. And it is definitely not because there is a lack of beef in the United States. North Koreans eat grasshoppers. Yes, by the way, if you go to a supermarket in South Korea, you can see canned fried grasshoppers as a snack to have with beer, and nobody is surprised. But North Koreans do have hunger in everyday life, and it even far worse than a Western journalist can imagine. They do have corruption, they do have crimes like theft, they do have public executions, and I have witnessed one of them. In a recent American book on North Korea, I read that inhabitants of a prison camp eat corn porridge, pickled cabbage, and cabbage soup. I'll tell you that many North Koreans outside prisons indeed would consider this meal a fortune. People in Pyongyang told me in the 90s that they could not afford corn porridge. They only a watery glue made from corn flour with just a few grains of corn in it and dried cabbage leaf. So it is even much worse than a prison camp described in the book. Even in Pyongyang, apartments are not provided with hot water. People usually do not have refrigerators at home and heating. In the apartment for foreign diplomats where I lived, the temperature at home was just 56 degrees in the wintertime. In the Korean apartments, I saw a smokestack in every window and people grabbing tree branches and stolen logs every night for heating because coal briquettes were not enough for every family. There are almost no trees left along the roads and hillsides. Blackouts are a common thing in North Korea. I saw ghost towns at night with no lights at all because there was no electricity. By the end of 1987, the Soviet Union opened its first national exhibition that was held in Yomotdong Expo Center in Pyongyang. At the entrance to the main pavilion, there was a book stand displaying huge photo albums. There were 100 printed editions of various topics about Russia. However, they were there just for one day. The next day, all the books had gone. A Russian lady guide explained to me that all the books somehow were stolen. And a Korean guy who was told about that just gave me a smile and said that stealing a book was not considered stealing in Korea. especially if we take into account that there is no other way in North Korea to get these books. There at the exhibition, a man in his 60s dressed in a green Mao-style jacket approached me asking to please get me some fiction books. I'm a professional literature translator, he said in fluent Russian, but I have nothing to translate. After this encounter, I noticed that many Koreans in the north are surprisingly open and can tell a lot about their lives. Once I was driving my car from the airport to Pyongyang when two female soldiers asked me could I give them a lift to the central railroad station. They were a bit confused for a while when they realized that had gotten into a foreigner's car, but the urgency to catch the train dispelled their caution. The woman soldiers were sitting quietly on the back seat of the car. There was no speed limit on the road, so we quickly arrived in the station. Of course, I didn't ask for any money, but one of the girls wrote something on a piece of gray paper and handed it to me. She thanked me and said, "This is the address of my father and my family living in a village. If you have time, please come and you will always be welcomed." Then I noticed that village people in North Korea are more open than in the capital, probably because they have less to lose. A few times I stopped near vendors along the roads outside the capital, talked to them, and they told me about the regulations they had on the ways they traded their goods and so on. Once I visited a random village, walked around, came up to a house and spoke to the owner. First, I explained that I was a journalist from Russian news agency, and I just wanted to know how people lived in the countryside, and convinced the Korean first that I didn't have any bad intentions. After which time I was able to take pictures with no problems. However, the Korean person apologized and explained that it was necessary to report my visit to the head of the village. To this day, I have not received any complaints about that visit from the information department. And now I'll show you some photos, if they're ready, that may seem untypical for Westerners, but these pictures show what you can see every day while being in North Korea. Well, this is a construction site, and for encouraging constructors to do their work faster, they sent a group of so-called agitation brigade, which play music and shouting slogans. But as you see, their faces are very gloomy and they have no enthusiasm at all. This is the Kim Il-sung Square in the center of Pyongyang. North Korea is a land of very beautiful nature and sightseeing. This is a place near Chongqing City in the northeast. There's lots of seafood around, so potentially it's a very good. They have a very good destinations for tourism in the future. This is farmland near Pyongyang. What I was telling about how to take pictures of North Koreans, so I got very close to them and asked permission, and I was able to take the pictures, because normally if you do it very quickly, they will run away or just not let you do it. It's very interesting. Chuseok Day, it's a memory day for the dead. All Koreans get together and go to cemeteries with the families, with all the relatives, and I could go with them and see, and there was no objection at all. A widow. Okay. A typical bar which sells drinks and snacks for hard currency in Pyongyang. Catholic church. It's a few farmland just near the new district of Pyongyang. Chilgol. That's how they were building the skyscrapers in Pyongyang. As you see, the techniques is very primitive. It's just ropes which are tied with hands. Then they untie it, pull it up, and tie again. So it's very dangerous and very shocking to see. It was in the end of 80s. So all the buildings were built like that. By the way, embroidery, traditional Korean embroidery, and you can see Walt Disney's characters there. Quadrilles among children. Old guys playing chess in the streets, on the bank of Pyongyang River. It's interesting. I've been in factory, electronic factory. You can see senior Japanese tape recorders made in North Korea. This is the elite houses in the center of Pyongyang, near the buildings of across the road from the Central Party Central Committee. You can see this fence. It's maybe 3 meters high or higher, I don't know. And you can see a gun person, the guards. So the life of the elite is blocked from the access of the rest of the North Korean people. They live behind the fence from the rest of the country. That's how they collect fertilizers, natural fertilizers, from the frozen rivers. It's a Pyongyang River in Pyongyang. Lots of people, they just grab it, bring it to the fields. Journalists are invited for many events of South-North relations. This is Jung Ju-young, the founder of Hyundai Group in South Korea. He was the first businessman who came to North Korea at the end of the 80s and started actually the economic cooperation between the two sides. Again, the construction site, Gwangbok Street, before the Pyongyang Youth Festival. You can see the techniques, the machinery. Cars very old. Sometimes I saw pictures like that in Japanese press as labor camps, but it's just normal pictures, just normal construction sites. So I think many Koreans living in China take these pictures and then sell it to Japanese journalists for money, saying that this is a labor camp, and they publish. So it's normal construction site. It looks like a labor camp. Another thing is there was a young student from South Korea, Im Soo-kyung, who was called the Flower Unification. She was the first student from South Korea who crossed the border, if you remember, crossed the border in Panmunjom. No, sorry, she came from Germany and then crossed the border and returned to South Korea through Panmunjom and was arrested there. When she came to Pyongyang, the cars with her and they were driving along the streets in central Pyongyang, and I think the authorities could not expect that young students of North Korea will push and try to reach her and to touch her, to speak to her. And it was a mess on the road, because you see here, and there was nothing to do for the drivers, was just to drive on people. So nobody died, but I saw lots of shoes lying left on the road after that. So it was very interesting episode, my work there. And that's how people were waving from buildings in Kaesong City when she was going to Panmunjom to go back to North Korea. That was, you see, it's a sincere feelings, the will of unification. That's her. A couple of years ago in Moscow airport, I met a South Korean graduate student, and I asked him if he knows who Lim Soo-kyung was. He said no. So she's forgotten now. The scenery in Pyongyang is Moranbong Park in the center of Pyongyang. It's very beautiful. People gathering there for the weekends and holidays, have picnics. The quality of picture, I explained to you, it was made more than 20 years ago on just normal film, and then I scanned it from slides. That's why. So this is from KCNA. I have a couple of slides just to compare. These buildings were built just last month or a couple of months ago, within a few months, like Singapore. But nobody lives there, I guess. At the university, I saw this place with some mathematic formulas on the trees to let students memorize it easily. You know, if they walk around, they say, "Oh." So good invention. This is a modern. The last time I've been to North Korea was 3 years ago. I came there with Minister Lavrov of Russia, and I took pictures of some not marketplaces, some street shops selling food. It is expensive, very expensive, but there's a lot of food, and we can suggest that if they sell it in this amount, so there are someone who can afford to buy it. 14,000 won is one duck. It's about, I guess, 6 or 7 monthly wages of North Koreans. So you can imagine how expensive it is, but somebody buys it, you know. Cell phone in North Korea. SunNet, let's say, provider. This is a result of sunshine policy in North Korea by the previous president and Kim Dae-jung, who started it. South Korean buses in Pyongyang streets. People on the bus stop. This is the joint, the product of a joint venture between South and North Korean car, made with the help of South Korea. Russian Orthodox Church in Pyongyang. It was built just especially for the Russians living in Pyongyang. Not, yeah, Koreans. He was sent to Moscow for a couple of years. He was taught and sent back. It's just, you know, he got an order from the party. Is the church empty? It's empty, yeah. But Russians living there, if they want, they can come. And it's just for Russians. It just was a goodwill of Kim Jong-il. Catholic Church was built by the end of 80s, and it's not empty. A lot of, I don't know who the people there, but I mean, maybe they are repatriants from Japan, or I don't know, some locals too. But I know you can tell it by their appearance, by their clothes. But it's not for, you know, propaganda only. I'm sure about that. Is the Catholic Church in North Korea? Yes. I have no idea, but I saw there priests from Canada, from South Korea, and they have books, the religious books and Gospels printed in South Korea. They're using. I have no idea about the connection with Vatican. I don't know. This is, they're all mixed, sorry. And it's again the shop, the food shop in the center of Pyongyang. That's how it looks. Wedding, theater, central station. This is just normal human happiness. Youth in the end of 80s, definitely influenced by, foreign. I like these people, just spending, having fun. Peasants' celebration of good harvest. Octopus in Chongjin City. This is the children who writing down the number plates of every foreigner car, and just CCTV camera by Chechadis. And this is the picture I took when I visited the village I was talking about, a random village. And a press conference of another South Korean student came to North Korea after the Lim Soo-kyun, a few years later. This is the snow I was writing about and got critics from the Department of Information. Football play between the teams of North and South Korea in Pyongyang. It was a very exciting event, and South Koreans came. It was really, sincere attitude. You can feel it, And how they washed the central Kim Il-sung Square with their hands, I've never seen it anywhere else. A factory closed. It's a textile factory, and you can see this. It's just for war, for training, for shooting training, just in case. So they stop working sometimes, and quite a modern equipment in the factories. And it's a reckless crossing river, Taedonggan River, which is very wide in the winter. Actually, this is spring, and the ice is cracking already, but they're still walking there. If you see the Google map or Google Earth, Taedonggan River, you can see there's some part of it what took taken in winter time, so we can see lots of lines which left by the feet of people walking. That's how it happens. But it's very dangerous. Taekwondo training. Another example of potential for tourism, this is Chilbosan Mountain. All the mountains in North Korea are very different. Kimgyeongsan, Myeongsan, and Chilbosan, they are completely different, not the same. It's very interesting and very close, It's a Japanese sea, or sorry, Korean, East Korean Sea. The beaches are very empty because North Koreans are not allowed to travel freely in the country. So usually they're used by foreigners and a few locals. Can you imagine such a beach in South Korea or somewhere in California? Lake Sogam. Very beautiful. Welcome in English. But it's empty. Nobody. But how the typical North Korean village looks. Inside the village house, it's a kitchen. Yeah. That's all I have. Yes.
Thank you, Ivan. We'll go ahead and pass the mic, and we'd ask that you introduce yourself by name and affiliation. If I could ask a question or two first. What do you make of the opening now that we have with the ability for there to be coverage through AP out of Pyongyang? And then I see this week that North Korea and Indonesia have signed press exchange agreement, and there seems to be some implied opening on that front too.
No, there's nothing unusual in it. I think it happened before. I remember the time when I was in Seoul. There was a CNN correspondent in Pyongyang. We could see him sitting in a Seoul foreign correspondence club, and saw a guy with the badge of Kim Il Sung, and he was he reporting from Pyongyang about the great leader. Then something happened, and they just stopped doing this. So they are open to foreign journalists, especially the West, because they want to. They want the country to be presented in a positive way in the Western countries, especially in the United States. They're eager to establish good relations, but they're dreaming of becoming China, like Nixon came to China in the 70s. They want somebody will come, like they hope that it will be Clinton or Bill Clinton. They're dreaming about it, just to start good relations. But there's no anti-American feelings at all in North Korea. I never felt it. There's no anti-American feelings among people. And you can sometimes, if you go to a hotel like Korea Hotel, which is this in the center of the city, lots of foreigners gathering there for a drink, and you always can meet some American guys there, but they sometimes they just don't tell who they are. But there are some contacts, and you know. The problem is with Russian journalists, and our agency tried to open bureau there, but they declined. So they said it's enough. They have TASS, they have one correspondent. It's a principle of reciprocity. One correspondent of Russia in Pyongyang and one from Korea in Moscow, and they said it's enough.
Do you have sort of a moment of surprise either during your time there, and then maybe similarly, what was it like stepping off that plane in South Korea and being the first Russian to cover from there, resident?
Yeah, the surprise for me was lots of similarities between two Koreas. Lots of differences, but lots of similarities in the mentality of people. As I told you, the first thing I heard in South Korea, welcome, please write good stories about our country. I said, yes, I will. Yeah, but it is different, but it's the same people with all the differences they have. Maybe in covering some events in Panmunjom and talks between two Koreas, we felt more free in the northern side, so we could walk very close to the line, where the buildings are, and in the barracks. But from the south, there was a red belt, and it was not allowed to step left or right, just like that. But in the north, you could walk around. Even sometimes when there were talks between South and North, we could cross the border, go to South Korea, listen to the briefing, and go back to nobody told us any, we didn't have any problems with that. And we didn't ask any permission. It was open during talks. The area is open, and we walked there all together. Interesting. Maybe if I would do it just myself, just one, I would have problem. But all together, no problem. But I cannot imagine it from the southern side, if we can go. I explained it. The talks were held on the northern side, not in the south. In the north, and we walked to the south to listen to the briefing. So they could not allow it to do it, but they did.
Please.
Hi, I'm James Lee. I'm a Career Society member, and I work in finance in New York. You mentioned that spending time inside North Korea after the first few months of feeling like this is a normal country and people have have the full range of what you might call ordinary human emotions. You said then you feel the country is like one lunatic asylum. You use that expression. So I was wondering, what exactly do you mean by lunatic asylum? Like, in what sense, lunatic? Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, if you imagine a place for mentally sick people, uh, there are gardens inside, flowers, very calm atmosphere, music, just to make them calm. But the life is not normal there. That's what I meant when I was talking about it in North Korea. And it was not my first impression. I realized what it is. But when you come to North Korea first, and it's a good weather, nice atmosphere, you just feel good because the fresh air. Uh, just you just got this. Not because you don't know what the life is, but you have this impression of you feel calm because everything is just like you step into the parallel reality. There's no traffic, no, it's absolutely beautiful scenery, but then it's it's boring, you know. It's boring, and you see how life is, and you start thinking that you can get crazy being there for several years, seeing it every day. You wake up every morning and you can hear the marshes, the music, the same songs, and it's not very easy, you know. That's why I use this. Maybe it's not the right word, lunatic asylum. Maybe English is not my native language, so but I couldn't find anything else.
Hi. My name is Gary Mutz. I'm a member here, and I have a master's degree from Oklahoma University. And I have two questions. One is, where have your articles appeared? And would North Korea embrace some movie star like Angelina Jolie?
I don't think they know her, but they did saw some films on TV, like Bertolucci's The Last Emperor, or a few more movies, but they don't know much about it, and they don't really interested in this. And what was the first question?
Where have your articles
Where?
appeared? Yeah. New York
On the wire?
Times?
No, no. I was writing for Russian media, not for New York Times.
And
Yeah.
Korean media too?
Yeah. No, no.
Just
It's
Russian?
impossible. Russian, yeah, but it is a news service. So when it was released, it was reprinted by South Koreans and Japanese papers, and that's why North Koreans was very upset about that. Mm.
Hi, my name is Sean King from a firm called Park Strategies. Two quick questions. Were you in North Korea in 1988? And if so, when North Korean agents blew up the South Korean airliner before the Olympic Games, was that covered or mentioned in North Korea?
It was not 88. It was earlier.
87.
87.
Yeah,
Okay.
I came after that.
Okay. And then my other thing is,
Okay.
when North Korea made its most recent rocket launch last month, I thought the Russian condemnation of it was unprecedentedly harsh. Did you see it that way? Did you see this as any
No,
shift in Russian policy?
the last one, the last launch and the last nuclear test, but they did it. It was the same. The reaction of Russia was the same. Just people do not remember how it happened 3 years ago. So just see and think this is sorry. No change.
In late 70s, there were several abduction cases Okay, one of the South Koreans, no, two of the South Koreans were a movie director,
Shin Sang-ho.
Shin-Sang-ho,
Mhm.
and
His wife.
divorced at that time
Mhm.
and then got
Right.
together,
Yeah.
Cheon-hee. And another case was the pianist, Baek-won-woo. We South Koreans think they were abducted, kidnapped. How that those both instances were published or printed or broadcast in North Korea. Are you aware of that? Those cases?
Yes, it was not published about any kidnapping, or it was just North Koreans knew very well the films. They were very popular. They got awards at international festivals. Yeah, Salt, the film Salt, with the main role was played by the wife of Shin Sang-ho. And they looked that they are very pleased to be in North Korea, actually. It was not published. Everybody knew them, but in the press, in North Korean press, it was never discussed how it happened. No, they knew that just they have chosen the North Korean society as their homeland. And I have a personal opinion about that, but it's my personal opinion.
Ivan, when you were there 3 years ago with Foreign Minister Lavrov, did you feel that North Korea had changed a lot since
No,
the time you lived there?
No,
It had not.
except of appearing mobile phones, more food in the streets, but the rest was just the same. No change.
Rhonda Halbin, tots.de. I wondered if you got from people a sense of what they feel they would like to have happening with people outside of North Korea in terms of more contact and being able to have improved relations. Is there something you had the sense they felt people could do elsewhere?
You mean
that
the
would help
ordinary people?
The ordinary people.
When you are hungry, and you have lots of problems with heating, with raising children, you don't pay much attention to what's going on outside the country. So I didn't notice any interest, because they have other problems in everyday life, how to get food. This is about the ordinary people. But even about South Korea, I expected they had lots of interest about South Korea as well. But I found that it's not true. Once I brought a newspaper, South Korean newspaper from Panmunjom back to Pyongyang. I gave it to one guy, and I was expected that he will read it from the beginning to the end. But in a couple of hours, I opened the door and saw him sleeping with his face covered with the newspaper, and asked him, "Isn't it interesting for you?" He said, "Not much." So this is about. I heard some proposals from Americans that let's drop radios to North Korea, make them give them more information. They are not interested in this information. Give them food first. Hungry people are not interested in it. And I tried to show some. We had the antenna in our home in Pyongyang. We could receive South Korean TV stations, and I tried to show some programs to North Koreans, especially news. I was expected that it would be interesting for them, but they asked me if I had kung fu movies instead. So they don't care. In general, maybe there are some people who are interested, but not much.
My name is Kevin McGee. I represent Redburn Consulting. I wonder, I don't recall when Madeleine Albright was in North Korea, but it was probably one of the key events in the relationship.
Right.
And I wonder, were you there at that time?
No, I was in Seoul, but I met her in Seoul when she came back from Pyongyang to Seoul. I met her in Seoul.
And my question is,
Mm.
to use a popular term now, has the United States foreign policy pivoted away from what it might have been some rapprochement between the two countries, and now leading lights in this country are looking for the demise of North Korea in some way, shape, or form?
I cannot tell for the American policy. I don't know. That's the thing I would like to know. Yeah. Yeah, but I personally I think that the official relations will never be established between the two countries. I think that there is an opinion, not 100%, but it could happen that the talks of Madeleine Albright and Pyongyang about opening the embassy, they even choose the site that was the former GDR embassy in Pyongyang. It was pretty good. And Americans came and expected it, but I'm not sure they were definitely ready to, because the Congress would never agree to for the relations. Even if the government will decide, will do it, but the Congress will oppose it. I think so, because there are obligations between of the United States before South Korea not to recognize the North. So it will not happen.
You just answered my first question, actually. My name is Hengil Han, and I'm a curator. And you lived both in South and North, and the sentiment of anti-Americanism, which country is higher between North and South?
Of course, South Korea.
Why do you think that?
I don't think, I just felt it.
No, what do you think the reason for that?
The reason for that, I think American troops, many South Koreans still considering it like as a occupation. And I heard about that during the student demonstrations in the Yonsei University and Hanguk University. There was lots of, at that time, there was lots of demonstrations. I covered them, and sometimes I even had problems. They saw my face and called me the American bastard. I told them I'm not American. They said, it's strange, but you have a long nose. It's the stereotype of all Koreans. If you have a long nose, you are American. Or once I was driving, I catched a taxi in Seoul. The gloomy driver sitting and then asked me, tell me, is life better in the United States? I told him I've never been to the United States. And then he pushed on the brakes and we stopped. And he said, oh, you're not American. I said, no, I'm Russian. And he was extremely surprised. So maybe now it's different, but that time at the 90s, when a South Korean saw a person with European appearance, he definitely was sure that it is American.
Do we have one last question? Okay, with that, please help me in. You have one. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Duke Shin, and I work in finance. And in your opinion, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that both South Koreans and people in the U.S. or in the West have of North Korea, in your opinion?
I was talking about it a little bit before. Misconception is there's some expectation that North Korea will collapse in 2 years. I heard this for many years. I don't know where it comes from, the 2 years. But every time when the new administration comes, they said, in 2 years, it'll be a collapse. When Kim Il-sung died, Kim Jong-il took power, and I have read in South Korean press, it will take 2 years after that, it'll collapse. This 2 years is a magical number, for this is the main, two years. I don't know why 2 years. Not 3 and not 1.
Your view is not going to collapse.
I don't know. Itself, it will not collapse. It will, it's very flexible. It can, but the problem is they cannot. The future of North Korea does not depend on themselves. It depends on the other countries and the future of South Korea as well. Korea is still a crossroad of interests of big superpowers, and all they have their own interests, and it's a pity.
Thank you. Ivan Zakharchenko, please, from RIA-Novosti. We would like to note that we do have 3 more parts in this series. We have Ambassador John Everard in with a new book on Korea on June 19th. And then in July, we have 2 presentations, one with Dr. Sue Terry of the Council on Foreign Relations in Colombia, who will talk about reading North Korea, meaning analyzing North Korea. And then we also have Claudia Van Roo from the United Nations World Food Program, talking on feeding North Korea. We will also have some agrarian posters in our gallery from North Korea to complement that part of the series. So we hope to see you back for that. Most importantly, on Thursday of next week, we have our next policy session on Korea and the world, which will feature His Excellency Kim Yong-mok, who served as the ambassador to Iran before his appointment here as Consul General. And that evening presentation will allows for a conversation about Iran, North Korea, and the U.S. ROK partnership. So it should be a very, very interesting hour's dialogue. Hope to see you back for that. Please do consider joining if you are not a member. Thank you. I know we had 1 additional membership sign up today, and we do appreciate that. And for any of you interested, June 4th is our annual gala, and we would love to see you there. You can find information on all of this at koreasociety.org. Thank you to Nikki Desai, our Director of Policy and Corporate Programs, to Peter in our sound booth, to Andrew and all of our other kind supporters here. And again, to Yvonne, thank you very much for coming.